Well, good evening. Good evening. Do you all love me? I was looking at the crowd. I know most of you think you do, and I appreciate that. Appreciate all of you coming. This is a good sampling of Angelina County, and those people who really count are out here in the audience. And so I'm excited to be able to talk to you tonight and tell you some stuff that's been kind of bottled up, and so I want you to just hang on tonight. If you don't mind, I'm gonna sit. On Friday, I'm supposed to have cataract surgery, and I can't see my notes if I don't get in a little closer to them. So if y'all will allow me, I'm gonna get down here where I can see. Yes, sir.
We'll give you more than 3 minutes.
Oh, please. Thank you so much. And that'll probably be on my tombstone. You've only got 3 minutes, so. Oh man, I've got so much to tell you, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But I know you wouldn't be here if you weren't interested. And I'm older than most of you, so I am conscious of when we need to get out of here. Bedtime won't be too far down the road. I just want to ask you, just listen intently. I'm not here to ask you to do anything. I just want to talk to you about things that I haven't had an opportunity to talk to you about before, and I'm not planning on doing anything tonight that the sheriff will want to put me in jail for. But we need to talk about our county government. I'm talking about our county government, yours and mine. It's become sadly corrupted, and they're not going to listen to me. And I've tried to be as cordial as I can, and but they just don't recognize that I really am expressing what I think most of you are concerned about, our collective interest in our common welfare. I think it's important that we get an opportunity to discuss it. It's hard to say. I'm 81 years old. I've lived in this county all of my life. I love this county. I love this place to call home. But sometimes there comes a point where you just have to express yourself, and I couldn't do it seemingly at any other venue than this. And I realized that the only way I was going to get to do it is if I personally rented this civic center and invited all of you to come and give me the opportunity to tell you the truth, the whole truth as I know it. So help me God. I happen to believe in the power of truth. People ask me, why are you doing this? Well, we need to know the truth about things. There's a scripture in the book of Amos that says, how can two walk together unless they agree? And if we don't agree on what the truth is, we're going to be so divided, and our county would be like Washington, things that Washington, D.C.'s been promoting. I want to show you some things, and I've never been very good at this. It's not that I've forgotten. I just never was very good at it. All right. That would be Mahatma Gandhi. And y'all probably didn't know him personally, nor did I, but I thought this was really important. Silence becomes cowardice when occasion demands speaking out the whole truth and acting accordingly. And I don't want to be guilty of that. Our Christian Bible and so many different verses, particularly John 8:32 and John 17:17, say that the light of truth dispels the darkness in which lies the stronghold of evil. And I'm not here to preach, but I believe that. And I know that we have to do something about it. Thomas Huxley, he said, learn what is true in order to do what's right. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And Sir Winston Churchill said, the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it and ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. It's just truth. And truth is so critical. And Abraham Lincoln said, I'm a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The real point is to bring them the real facts. And that's what I'm going to try to do with you tonight. And then what you do with the truth and the real facts is going to be up to you. But you can share the burden of this with me, and I will appreciate that. And then you're going to be able to share that truth with boldness and with wisdom. And hopefully, all of our personal, our public affairs, I mean to say, will become personal to all of us. It's not enough for us just to think, oh, well, that's public, or that's political, or that's something else. No, it needs to be personal in our lives. It's our government, it's our Constitution, and so on. I appreciate what Plato said. I'll show you this in a minute. He said, the price that good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. The price that good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men, maybe, and women. This is a sad day, and a sad time to have to talk about what's going on like this, and the people that we know and people that we have loved and appreciated that have not been taking the right path. So this is a long, sordid story, but you're going to need to listen to the end. Listen to the whole thing, because it's been going on for a couple of years, and there's no way to appreciate what was happening until you know what finally happened and how it was all carried out. All of us know that terrible roads, years of terrible road, finally drove us as citizens to begin to demand professionalism, professional leadership, and transparency, which we've not ever had really in our county government, and economy. And we have to take advantage of the opportunity to learn about what we can do. You know, as we've gone through all that stuff about the road situation, and I think the Texas legislature had anticipated this problem, and they wrote up a statute for it, provided a mechanism for us to be able to vote for a system of road governance that would consolidate all 4 commissioners' precincts under the management of a professional civil engineer. I know we have some individuals here tonight from other counties that are going through some of the same thing, and have driven down here to learn what we've gone through, so that maybe they won't have to go through it. This is the statute that said that we would be able to get a petition together, and we would demand that the Commissioners Court put the question about a unit road system on the ballot. And so, as you know, we did that. Let me bring this up a little bit closer here. And then if the majority of the votes received in the election favor its adoption, then this subchapter takes effect in the county on the date that the official result of the election is determined. And that happened. But people wanted it because it would help to ensure that professionalism came to roads and to that portion of our county government. And this is what so many of the Commissioners Court have ignored. It says the county road engineer, the Commissioners Court shall appoint a county road engineer who must be a licensed professional engineer experienced in road construction and maintenance and meet the qualifications required by the Texas Department of Transportation for its district engineers. That's a pretty high standard. And so the legislature certainly felt like this was the only thing that could happen. There's one instance where if you're totally unable, no way you can hire an engineer, then it does provide that if you're unable to do that, the Commissioners Court can reduce the requirement just as somebody's had some construction experience. And that's what some of the commissioners were looking forward to from the day that it began. What would happen would be that the commissioners, if they hired the civil engineer, they would still be responsible to set and to oversee the road department budget, but they wouldn't be involved in the day-to-day operations of road construction and maintenance. And their workload was going to be reduced probably in half, and hopefully their salary would be too. But that was one of the reasons why they fought this so much. The first thing we had to do was to gather up at least 2,600 signatures on a petition. People wanted it so bad, it was easy, and we got 3,500 signatures. Presented that to the commissioners court, and they had to call the election. And so we had the election on November 3rd, and these were the results. That's pretty overwhelming. Almost 25,000 people in Angelina County voted for the unit road system with an engineer. That's all they wanted. That's what they needed, and so that was something like 73% of the vote. Now, the Commissioner Court could have done this. They could have adopted this on their own, but they refused to do that for years. And so we had the right to demand that they institute that and consolidate all those precincts together. But all four of the commissioners at that time, that was Cheshire and Pitts and Kennedy and Harrison, all opposed the adoption of the unit road system. And I expected that, but I thought that it was probably because they didn't want to give up control of their little kingdom. I think we all realize that roads have always been a pawn for votes. I'll fix your road if you go and vote for me. Under the statute, after the election overwhelmingly passed, the Commissioners Court was immediately required to consolidate those precincts under the unit road system and hire a professional engineer. Okay. Well, you're going to find out they delayed for 10 months trying to keep from hiring the engineer applicant that we had. So why do you think that the legislature required an engineer as opposed to someone else? Well, first of all, he's educated but at least 4 years in college, a professional civil engineer. He has to be licensed. He certainly has oversight over his profession. He's required to have continuing education every year. He's subject to all the ethics requirements that are required of him. And then the State Association of Engineers requires, of course, competence and oversight and integrity. Now, you have to wonder, why did the commissioners not want that? They surely could see that it would be good for roads. They don't know anything about roads. They think if they can fool you, and they have for years and years. It's partly our fault. I can remember much younger, and we always called him a road commissioner. And we just thought that the only requirement for them was that they could drive a bulldozer or a maintainer. And times have changed so much. But they knew that an engineer would be capable of assessing the actual condition of the roads. And he's trained to design for material and personnel and equipment. And he is capable of determining what has been done on the roads and, more importantly, what has not been done on our roads. An engineer knows what records are necessary to be kept and what records should be available and weren't. And then he has certain ethical obligations to report what he finds and knows. He has to be transparent with us, and that's when really rubber hit the road right there. So it immediately became the law, and it wasn't long till I realized that the engineer, actually any engineer, was the reason that they fought the implementation of the unit road system. That's what they were worried about. And it wasn't the engineer Chuck Walker personally that they opposed. They opposed him because he was an engineer and because of his professional ability and insight. It was what he knew and would find out about the roads and their mismanagement and corruption that would be uncovered. An engineer would, by necessity and opportunity, become a whistleblower. The commissioners could not afford to have their misconduct uncovered lest they be removed from office and maybe even go to jail. But Pitts and Kennedy decided that after Cheshire was removed from office, that if they could force the engineer to resign, they could create an atmosphere that no engineer would ever want to work under and claim that they couldn't hire another one, which is what they're doing now. And then they could reduce the requirement of an engineer and avoid the law and hire a non-engineer. They just did that last month. That was the kind of the end of the loop, but that's where they wanted to be. You remember Precinct 1 Commissioner Greg Harrison lost his race to Steve Allen in Precinct 1 in November 2020, and then he resigned for some reason about 3 months later, and Judge Limberry appointed Rod Paulette to fill his position. And Paulette was a professional businessman and is very much in favor of an engineer to manage county roads, and he has had many engineers to work for him in his businesses and so on. But when Paulette was appointed, he and the county judge were the only ones that wanted an engineer. Cheshire, Pitts, and Kennedy controlled the vote and refused to hire the only engineer applicant, who was Chuck Walker. Then I filed a civil suit against Cheshire, and you all know him pretty well probably, to remove him from office, and in August 2021, a district judge removed him and sent him to prison, and that's where he is today. Then Judge Limberry appointed Steve Smith to fill Cheshire's place, and then Smith and Paulette voted to hire the engineer, and Pitts and Kennedy voted no, and County Judge Don Limberry broke the tie, and they got him hired. That should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. Not nearly the end of the story. Chuck Walker was an excellent choice for the road system manager, and this is what the Lufkin city manager that he worked under said about him. Pull it up a little bit. He said, "I can say, however, that Chuck Walker is a highly trained and skilled engineer with a command of road construction, repair, budgets, supervision of employees, and drainage issues that will be hard to match anywhere. Moreover, he's always positive and was always responsive with members of the public and elected officials. His expertise and experience were valued at the City of Lufkin. Were the county to ultimately hire Chuck Walker, I expect county residents would soon notice the difference he can make in the county road system. He really is a fine man. They have maligned him and done everything in the world that they can. I'll tell you more about that. When he was hired, then he had to start from ground zero to try to consolidate all the precincts, figure out what 700 miles of road, what the conditions were, what should he do, how should he do it, and all that. And he immediately found that there were no reliable written records on those 700 miles of road. None that you could look up and say, that's what needs to be done to this road or that. He had to start from a baseline of zero. I'm going to give you an example here. One of the things that was found, I had filed some Freedom of Information requests and got some information. Engineer had gotten some information. The law had required the commissioners all in August of every year to file a road condition report. And it's supposed to be able to be used for the budgeting process, which is going on now in September. And so every other commissioner would know what condition of the roads were in each of their precincts. And then anybody that happened to get elected and took over office, they would know what the condition of the roads were in their precinct. So hardly anybody had ever seen these road condition reports, and they'd only filed them for the last 4 years, even though they were required since 1992. Show you a road condition report. This is one by Terry Pitts in 2020. And if you look on the right-hand side, his report on the roads in his precinct, I've only put up one page here. All of them are this way. He said, well, that one is poor, and that one's fair, and that one's good. That's fair, fair, and fair. Do you know what that means? Of course you don't know what that means. Nobody knows what that means. They don't have any definitions of what good, fair, or poor is. That's their answer for the road condition report, that they're required by law, under oath, to file every year. And so this is what they got. And I'll show you one thing. Other thing is just even seemingly more ridiculous than that. There is a question on the front page of their report that they have to make. And I want you to remember, this is under oath. It's required, let's see, I anticipate that $14,906,191 will be reasonably necessary for the maintenance of the roads in this precinct for the coming year. Okay. Now, nearly $15 million. Do you know what his budget is? Total budget? Now, we're talking about maintenance here. We're talking about filling potholes and grading and maybe mowing, all right? His budget is $1.4 million. And he says, under oath, it's going to take $15 million just to maintain them. It is so totally ridiculous. The first time I ever saw that, I said, that's got to be a misprint. No, it's not. That's what he put down, and nobody knows what. I sent a FOIA request. I said, how did you come up with those numbers? What are you talking about? And of course, they don't have anything. They don't have any numbers, no calculations. They just used a number. Now, he wasn't the only one who did that. Commissioner Kermit Kennedy did the same thing, and see, his all are fair, good, bad, poor, whatever. And that's all. And then his budget's about $400,000 a year. He's got like 37 miles. And he said it's going to take $4,800,000 to maintain his roads for the nenext year. No, it's unbelievable. I see you looking, it's unbelievable. And of course, obviously, he doesn't have any records either. How'd they come up with these numbers? And of course, these things were so important to the legislature that they require them to be signed and filed with a grand jury. Well, for them, it was just an opportunity for it to be gone. Nobody'd ever see it. I'm telling you, there might have been a couple people on the commissioner's court that saw them, but after that, nobody has ever seen these. And so Chuck Walker is trying to figure out, well, surely there's stuff about the roads. What information can I start with? Well, in addition to all of that, Walker, the engineer, found no reliable records on the equipment, no inventory nor maintenance of 127 pieces of equipment that they had, so many of which were just in a state of disrepair. Nacogdoches has a county road, unit road system. They've got 800 miles of road, we have 700. And they only have 82 pieces of equipment. So here we are sitting here with all these duplications between the precincts. And so he's got to try to figure out what is equipment going to work, what we ought to do with it. He said there were probably at least 30 pieces of equipment that had to have tires put on them. It weren't even operational. He found that some very expensive pieces of equipment were leased rather than being purchased by the county so that they could avoid the budget constraints. Instead of buying a $250,000 piece of equipment, they leased it. Cheshire did this mostly. So that pieces of equipment had to be let go, and the county lost a lot of money on those. And he found no work orders. Now, most of you, many of you have worked in situations where, you're working and your boss tells you, I want you to go fix this, go work on that, or whatever. And it gives you a work order and all that. And we were sitting here, and we're going to be talking about $6 million in a minute. Can you believe they had no work orders? They would send their men out of the job, go out there and fix that road. And that was all. The commissioner didn't know what to tell them to do. They didn't know what it was going to cost. They didn't know how long it was going to take. So they didn't do anything, just have a verbal thing, tell them what to do. And so without a work order, it's impossible. The work orders have to be prepared to say how much equipment you're going to need, how many people you're going to need, how much material that you're going to need on the job. And then you go out there and you do it, and then they can follow up and see if they did their job and so on. We didn't know. I'm not talking about a few. I'm talking about no work orders that I've seen, and hardly anybody has looked at this thing any closer than I have. So it's just incredible that they had no work orders. And of course, obviously, he found the roads to be just exactly like we thought they were, terrible. And they've been terrible for years. And I'm not just talking about in Pitts's precinct. But then he knew that they had borrowed $6 million. The Commissioner's Court had borrowed $6 million to put surface on roads. And to borrow that $6 million and not come to the public for an election, they did it on what's called a tax note. So the four commissioners on their own said, we're going to borrow $6 million so we can buy material, just material, to put on the roads, mostly asphalt, some rock, other stuff. And so first thing everybody kept asking me, well, what's happened to the $6 million? And I said, I don't know, I'm going to try to find out. And so I filed another FOIA request on Pitts for all his records that showed what he did with his part of the $6 million. They divided it 4 ways, and according to their amount of roads they had, and then they spread it over 3 years. So in 2020 is what, it was soon after 2020, I was trying to get this determined. And so I sent that request out, and I wanted to know what he did with his part of the $6 million. This is one of about 100 pages of this that he sent me. These are loading way tickets, I guess. And and this is what he showed me that was proved that where the stuff went. I wasn't as concerned about how much money he spent as where'd the asphalt go? Because they said originally, if we can borrow this money, we can buy asphalt in the bulk, and we can buy it a lot cheaper. They never bought it in bulk. They never had bought it in bulk, and they've not today ever bought it in bulk. They'd go and buy a load when they wanted it. And so he said, well, look here. Maybe I can make this thing work. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that. They've got it says tax note, and here's a name of one of the roads. There were 7 roads that Pitts was going to fix, and he said he could borrow this money, and he wanted to fix those 7 roads in 2020. And so somebody, whether it was Pitts or whoever it was, just wrote the name of a road on the ticket. That's it. That's all we knew. And I said, surely you got work orders that'll tell us where they worked and how much you sent out there and all that. Wrong. There wasn't. But he did send me this. Let me get you the top part here. So he called it his estimated cost, but he said he was going to put on the left-hand side there, you see the roads, and he was going to put asphalt on it, and he was saying to us and to the lender for the $6 million, if you'll let me have, I'll budget $502,776.82, and I will put asphalt on 11.10 miles. Who knows? I mean, so that's what happened. So they borrowed the money, and we don't know anything until the end of the year. I sent another FOIA request, and in that request, get this, exact same thing. And you see everything else is the same except this is what he said he did for 2020. Right here, all that. That adds up to be 7.2 miles. And he spent so in $502,000, he actually spent $4,000 less than that. He spent $498,000. And they made a big deal out, he saved a bunch of money. So now, instead of 11.1 miles of road, and that's what he said he could do with $502,000, he only did 7.2 miles. That's 35% less. So I'm asking the question, where'd that 35% of that material go? They bought it. I don't think there's any doubt it was bought. But if he could do 11.1, but he only did 7.2, somebody's got to explain this. Well, I became even more suspicious, and I requested that the engineer take some folks out and actually measure the miles that he had covered. He was still a little over a year later, and you could still tell where the asphalt was put down. And so, so this, in measuring it, it was only 5.6 miles. It wasn't 7.2 or 11.1. It was 5.6 miles. We've had it measured 3 times. So we know that's how much he put down or didn't put down. And so this is what he stated he was going to do. This is what he claimed he did. And this is what he did. So just lies. So you knew something was seriously wrong. And so while they were out there, I asked him if he'd take some pictures. And this may be some of your roads. Some of you may live on these roads. And this is what he fixed. You can see some of it there. And a year later, it's hard like that, and like that, and that, and that, and that, and that. That one's not too bad. And that. So, not where I want to be. Going the wrong direction here. Okay. So what he did, we don't know what happened to asphalt, honestly. I'm absolutely confident it didn't all go on these roads like he said it did. And if it did, it couldn't. Nobody could do that poor of a job. So what's going on in the meantime is we're beginning to locate and find all this stuff, which is just staggering. And they obviously didn't want anybody talking about it. So Pitts and Kennedy began, as soon as Walker was hired, they began to malign him, accuse him of everything in the world, trying to get him to resign, because they knew they couldn't fire him. They didn't have any grounds for firing him. He was doing a great job under terrible circumstances and situations. But they made up false stories about him, and you've heard some of those. I promise you they're false. They called him a criminal. They threatened to fire him and to file criminal charges against him if he didn't resign. That's a crime in itself. But the first thing that they claimed against Walker was a phony argument that rose less than a month after he was hired. And that was September 21st, 2021, when he was actually hired. Walker had hired an assistant by the name of Earl Lucky. Might not have been that lucky. But anyway, this guy had worked for him at the city of Lufkin for a long time. He was a real confidant, a really fine fellow, and a good worker. And so he needed a good assistant. He knew that he could depend on this guy. And what happened was that Pitts and them claimed that Lucky was paid for one day that he didn't actually work. Now, this is so ridiculous, but here goes. Because there were no reliable written records on the 700 miles of road, Walker knew that setting up a complete road department, including all 4 precincts, was a monumental task. And it was going to take an enormous amount of time, much above the 40 hours a week that normally would be expected, even with Lucky helping him. So he hired Lucky on a salary to avoid all of the overtime that was going to be required, not only for him, but of course, Walker was on a salary, so he was expected to work a lot of time. And but in the process of that, Lucky advised Walker before he ever went to work, a couple of weeks before, that he had prepaid for a cruise out of Galveston, and that it would require him to take off one day that he would normally be working. And Walker agreed to that he could take off the day, which was on a Thursday, and that he wouldn't be docked in pay. Now, Pitts claimed Lucky was just an hourly employee, and like everyone else except for Chuck Walker. Pitts claimed that Lucky and Walker violated the law by paying Lucky for the Thursday that he was off, and unless Walker resigned immediately, Pitts would file criminal charges against them both. I mean, you can't process this. This is just so ridiculous. But Walker and Lucky refused to resign, so Pitts followed through with having felony charges filed against them both over about $200 in pay. Now, I want you to see this. One of the things that the commissioners didn't have beforehand, bet y'all never worked for anybody like this, didn't have a timesheet. They didn't check in or check out. They just said at the end of the week, well, I worked 3 hours overtime, or I did this, that, or the other. Well, of course, one of the first things that the engineer had to do was set up some daily timesheets where everybody checked in and everybody checked out. And so it turns out this one on the right is the day that Lucky left on a Thursday to go on his vacation, his trip. And if you'll see that all of the employees, all of them checked in, checked out at a certain time, except for William Lucky, because he was on salary. He didn't need to check in or out. And then you can see that closer. But on this date, the Thursday, he didn't check in. Normally they would write your name, just like Chuck Walker. He would write his name down there that he was there that day. Lucky didn't, because he was gone. Everybody knew he was gone. He intended to be gone. It was agreed that he'd be gone. And so, of all things, it proves that Lucky was on a salary, and he wasn't having to keep up with his hours. He had worked many, many hours before this date, overtime, and so they weren't expecting that, or at least Walker wasn't expecting that. And since Pitts had never used a time sheet, he filed charges against him, and you'll see more about that in a minute. And so I was really, really angry and upset about that, because I had looked at the whole thing and knew that the claim that Pitts was making was outrageous and nothing to it. So after Pitts threatened Walker and Lucky, I filed a civil suit on January the 12th, 2022, to remove Pitts from office, based on the information that Walker had discovered and that I had obtained through FOIA request. And these were the 6 allegations that I put in my lawsuit to remove Pitts from office. Now, this was a civil suit. I made the allegations that what he did with the unaccounted for asphalt purchased on a $6 million note was one of the allegations. That he had filed a false road condition report, and that amounted to perjury, did it under oath. Walker had found out that there's a road south of Huntington going down toward the lake called Tanksley Road, and turned out that Pitts had been taking care of William Tanksley's driveway, long driveway, and he had been taking care of that driveway, and that driveway is completely perpendicular to the county road. It wasn't a county road. He found out that Pitts was using county equipment, material, and personnel to fix a road called Oak Hill Road. It used to run off into what's the lake now, but it was under the Corps of Engineers and LNVA property, and most all of you probably know they're very particular about all of the property that they own around the lake, and you can't build anything, do anything on there. But Pitts was fixing the road that was on their property and building and helping to maintain a boat ramp that was illegal for some of the few people down there who were using it. And then one of the allegations was conspiring to reject the law that we're talking about here tonight, required the Commissioner Court to hire an engineer, and then official oppression and threatening the engineer with criminal charges if he didn't resign. And I filed that suit against Pitts under Chapter 87 of the Government Code, and that allows a private citizen, just like me or you, to file a suit to remove a public official for incompetence or official misconduct. However, the statute, strange, but the statute required that it be prosecuted or carried to a full term by the county attorney, but he refused to do so. Said he had a conflict of interest and that he couldn't do it. And the judge told him, said, well, you get somebody that can. Get another county attorney somewhere else or whatever. And so he called up the Attorney General of Texas and got an assistant attorney general named Kit Richardson to agree to be the prosecutor on my case. Well, on January 21st, I filed criminal charges against Mr. Pitts on all 6 counts, because it was criminal as well as civil. And I fully expected that the district attorney would turn it over to the Texas Rangers to investigate. I didn't know why. I never heard from the Texas Rangers. They never called me. I'm the one who knew it all. I'm the one who filed the charges. They never called me. And they've never talked to me to this day. And so it was over 4 months before I ever heard anything. And then on March the 8th, pretty soon after I had filed a civil suit against him, an Angelina County grand jury was impaneled, and they indicted Judge Limberry, Commissioners Paulette and Smith on a misdemeanor for meeting without notice on the day that Smith was appointed. 3 hours after he was appointed, they had a little meet and greet, said hello to each other, and Paulette didn't even know him, and they talked, and they said, well, you didn't file notice that y'all were going to have that meeting, and therefore you have violated the law, and so they indicted him for a misdemeanor. And that same grand jury also indicted Walker and Lucky for a felony of tampering with a government document, a timesheet. You saw them. They didn't tamper with anything, just the way that it was. But the grand jury indicted them for a felony. It's just unheard of. And so by this time, it was we might call a fait accompli. It was done. Everybody that was an official or an employee that was in favor of the unit road system with an engineer was under indictment. I know y'all saw it all over the paper. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then because the indictment on a misdemeanor, they knew that they could contact the Judicial Ethics Commission in Austin and get Judge Limberry removed. The next day, they removed him from office on a misdemeanor, and something that wasn't true, but it was the plan that Pitts had. And of course, they fired Walker. And I'd say in the 55 years that I've been practicing law, it's probably the most frivolous charges with no proof that I've ever seen go to a grand jury. So you got to be asking a lot of questions. I knew there was something seriously wrong. This just couldn't happen. So I began to suspect that Pitts had enlisted the Texas Rangers, 2 of them, Jim Hicks and Ryan Clendenin. One of them's in Nacogdoches, one of them's here. And that was the only way. They concocted these stories, and pushed them through the grand jury. And you've heard that, you know, you can be able to get a ham sandwich indicted through a grand jury. Well, this was more ridiculous than a ham sandwich. But they pushed it through the grand jury, and there is absolutely no way on earth that a grand jury would have ever done it unless the Rangers, who normally we all think the Rangers are qualified and fine people. Turned out that wasn't true. It turns out that Rangers Hicks and Clendenin are close friends and workmates with Commissioner Pitts' son, Rusty. So what do you expect? I mean, what do you think? We know that the Rangers were very aggressive toward all who were in support of the engineer, and they were very defensive of Commissioner Pitts. So 4 months after I filed charges against Pitts, the Rangers had still done no investigation on Pitts, even though the district attorney said she asked them to. If you imagine, it gets worse from here. Finally, and you can see why they didn't want me talking even 3 minutes. Well, finally, on June the 12th, 2022, I got an email from our district attorney. And she enclosed with it a letter that she had sent to the head of the Rangers in Houston. And in it, she listed all the 6 allegations that I had made against Pitts and asked them to investigate those charges. And her email contained a response. This is what she sent to me in June. But she had sent this letter to the Rangers on May the 10th, I believe that it was. And so back up. This was what the head of the Rangers wrote back to her on May 31st. Now, she wrote to them, I have her letter, where she wrote to them on May the 10th. Now, I'd asked her to do it back in January, but apparently this was her letter to them. There was a letter to them, and no use going through that right now. But she asked them, told them what the allegations were that I'd made, and we had sworn statements. We had everything, all the proof, and asked them to investigate it. And this is the head of the Texas Rangers, and he says this letter will acknowledge receipt of your May 10th, 2022 letter requesting the Texas Rangers conduct an investigation into alleged criminal conduct by Angelina County Commissioner Terry Pitts. Attached in response, Texas Ranger Ryan Clendenin conducted a limited, cursory evaluation of the allegations made against Commissioner Pitts. And based on his evaluation of the allegations and available information, Ranger Clendenin concluded there was insufficient evidence to support the allegations. Ranger Clendenin recommended the Rangers not conduct a formal investigation into these allegations, and I concur. Your request for a formal investigation is denied. Unbelievable. I mean, well, attached to it, which I don't know, I guess they intended that I might ultimately see it, but this was attached. It's an inter-office memorandum, and it's a memorandum prepared by Texas Ranger Clendenin. He said he received these allegations, and basically he went through all my allegations, and his thing was, well, it was he just missed his estimate a little bit. Or they had already worked on the other road, other commissioners had worked on that road, or somebody had a conversation with somebody with the Corps of Engineers, and that was okay for them to spend county money on government, federal government property, or that road, it could have been a county road, a guy's driveway. And so that's the kind of answers that they had to back to the district attorney. Let's see if I can get this a little better. And after all that, he says, Clendenin says, there is no indication that Commissioner Pitts violated any law or that he intentionally or knowingly did so. After conducting a discreet, well, he misspelled discreet, but he means it'd be E-E-T, and limited evaluation. I mean, it was so discreet, nobody knew about it. I did not discover any reasonable suspicion which would lead to an investigation. I don't believe a criminal investigation is warranted in this instance. Now, basically what he's saying, Flournoy's an idiot, or he's filed all these things, and it can't be no warrant for nothing is warranted to even investigate. This memo was dated 14 days after May the 10th, when the letter went there. So he obviously didn't do an investigation. He didn't intend to do any investigation, and they were protecting their friend's father. Then the letter was given, apparently, by Pitts to the Lufkin Daily News And they wrote this story, which they've not written any that weren't favorable to Pitts, but this one here. So basically, my picture and Pitts's picture and Ranger's probe of Pitts, not necessary. So, or noise, I don't know what he's doing or whatever. Then on, it gets better, hang on. I know you're shaking your head, I have to be. Then on June the 14th, 2022, I talked to the Assistant Attorney General, Mr. Richardson, asking him to proceed with my civil case to suspend Mr. Pitts while his trial was pending, which was supposed to be next February. Had a judge out of College Station, district judge. Well, when I asked him to proceed with submitting something to the judge to see if he wanted to suspend Pitts pending this, he just kept putting me off and kept putting me off and kept putting me off. And I thought, why? I even prepared the motion for him to give to the judge. I even did the research. He said, well, what about this and this and this and this? This is the Attorney General I'm talking to, Attorney General's assistant. And I answered all the things that were ever questions about what Pitts did and how they weren't defenses. So I can't really kind of figure out why it is that the Attorney General is sitting here. It's a civil case too. I mean, he could just at least just submit it to the judge. Well, he told me that he had taken the opportunity to drive to Lufkin from Austin and visit with Mr. Pitts. Now, he's supposed to be representing me and you, but he was going down and visit with Pitts himself. And so he said he did that. And Pitts gave him Ranger Clendenin's interoffice memo. And the Attorney General guy decided that if the Texas Rangers said there wasn't anything to my sworn allegations, that he wouldn't present or prosecute my case to remove Pitts to the district judge. And then I asked him if he disagreed with any of the facts that I had in my lawsuit and my allegations. And he said no, but if the Rangers thought Pitts did nothing wrong, then that he would go along with them. So obviously that killed my lawsuit to remove Pitts, and I'm sitting here dead in the water. And that's exactly what Pitts and Kennedy wanted. They wanted to shut me up. Then when I asked Richardson if he didn't think there was at least a genuine question about missing asphalt, he said no. I told him that there weren't even any work orders for the $502,000. And he said, well, he had some. I said, really? Where'd you get them? He said, well, I don't really remember. Well, that piqued my interest, obviously. I asked him outright, where'd you get them? I really don't remember. But he said he'd send them to me, and he did, and I'm going to show them to you. There are 7 of these, and these were the 7 roads. And the things about them I want you to look at. There's quantity, and there's how many hours a dump truck worked on that road while they were fixing it, how long a grader maybe or the loader worked, or how many people were there, and exactly how many tons of asphalt was put on that road. Now, let me just tell you, they didn't know how much asphalt was put on those roads, even if they were correct, until way after the fact. Now, you got to remember, work orders have to be prepared before the work is done. Okay, so they can tell them you're going to have to spend about 32 hours with a dump truck hauling asphalt, and we're going to need 3 men, and it's going to take that many hours, and so you're going to need to haul 833 tons of asphalt to that road, and that's going to cost that much in there. All right. So they're all basically alike. That's 833 tons. Thornton Road is 726 tons and 32 hours for a dump truck. And George Simpson Road, 548 tons, 16 hours, and 8 hours for a grader. And McKendree Road, any of y'all live on any of these roads? Okay, all right. So he said 437 tons on McKendree, and it was 24 hours for a dump truck. And Harley Golden Road was probably the biggest one. It had 2,542 tons and 16 hours with a dump truck. And how many dump truck drivers we got in here? And then Jim Finley Loop had 1,334 tons, and the dump trucks, they took 32 hours for the dump trucks to haul that much. And then one more, I think it's Spring Lake Drive, 315 tons, and they hauled that all in 8 hours. Now, I'm going to come back to that just a second. So, Pitts has given these 7 work orders that didn't exist until shortly before he gave them to him here just not very long ago. I'm absolutely positive about that. And so he gave him these work orders as proof that all that asphalt went to those roads. By the way, it says right there, 315 tons went to Spring Lake Drive. And so I'm looking at that, and I think something wrong here. So I said, okay, we'll measure. Let's take every road and let's measure the distance from the asphalt plant to the road and see how long it takes a dump truck to make that round trip. And we gave a dump truck 15 minutes for loading, 15 minutes for unloading, and the road going back and forth. And so realized then that it was going to take 70 minutes a load for Simpson Road. And we knew that every load carried about an average of 23 tons. And we looked at all the things, loading tickets, all it was about an average of 23 tons. And if you take Simpson Road, I don't know which one, we're on Spring Lake, I could take that one, but so I said, okay, you say, and represent this to the Attorney General, that you spent 8 hours hauling 315 tons. I'm going to tell you what it was on Simpson Road, and I can tell you on these others in just a second. So 16 hours of truck time actually spent on Simpson Road, and it was only possible that they could haul 18.67 loads in 16 hours. Okay? But to haul 548 tons, which is what it was, they said it was, that took 23.83 loads. So they couldn't have enough there. So they're 5.16 loads missing from Simpson Road. I'll go to this one here, Utah. Spring Lake. Spring Lake Drive, 315 tons. It took 48 minutes to make the round trip. And 315 tons, it took 13.7 loads to haul that much. But in 8 hours, all they could have hauled was 12.8 loads. No, that's not too far off, okay? But there's 7.8 loads missing at $74 a ton. And so there's $13,000 worth of asphalt missing on that road. And if we go back here to another one, that's just, I want to go back. That was quite a bit. Jim Finley Road loop. It took 56 minutes to make that route. 1,334 tons. It took 58 loads at 23 tons a load to haul 1,334 tons, and they said they used the truck for 32 hours. In 32 hours, the most it could haul would be 14.93 loads. Possible in 32 hours, there's 43.11 loads missing. And that's 73,367, using their numbers. This is so important, I'm going to take another one here. Harley Golden Road, this one's 2,542 tons. 2,542 tons. And it takes 56 minutes to make that round trip, okay? And to haul 2,542 tons, it takes 110.5 loads. It could have been. That was pretty fast to do that. That's probably true. So 110.5 loads is what it would absolutely be required to haul 2,542 tons to that road. But it was only 16 hours that the dump truck worked, and the dump truck in 16 hours, you can divide it by 56 minutes, and so it could only haul 14.23 loads. That's all that's possible. It couldn't haul any more than that. 14.23 loads are possible, and so only 95.63 loads are missing. 95.63 loads at 2,199 tons times $74 is $162,761. You get it? You understand? And these are their numbers. Now, just a minute. We're going to get some questions here in just a minute. Hang on, Bub. Hang on. I'll be through here in about 3 more hours. I'm kidding. Now, so the Attorney General was satisfied that there wasn't anything to investigate here on the roads, and so he was convinced, and he just turned me down. So that's been over a month ago, and they're not doing anything. The engineer had looked for work orders, and he even had an email from Pitt saying that somebody broke into his place after the engineer was hired, and somebody tore up his place and stole his stuff. And I got the email. So he looked through everything, trying to find any help that he could get on these roads. What he needed to know, and what were they doing with the $6 million? Where did that money go? And we're only working on pits, and others probably not going to be much different. And I sent a FOIA request, and I asked for work orders or anything shows where this material actually went, and I didn't get anything, nothing, other than the thing I showed you where somebody's written on it there. So it's very obvious that Pitt's made these things up and didn't give them to anybody else. Nobody else had ever seen these. And fortunately, the Attorney General said, well, he was trying to convince me that I didn't have no sense, and that he didn't need to do anything on it. I don't know if he's just lazy or what, I don't know. But anyway, so he just flat believed them and turned me down altogether. And so these things just appeared just for the benefit of the Attorney General. And that would be obstruction of justice if he did that. He did it, or he had somebody to do it. I'm absolutely confident of that. But I mean, wouldn't you think, wouldn't anybody think that at least it ought to be investigated? I mean, why would the engineers say there's nothing to investigate, not even a reasonable suspicion of anything wrong? There was something wrong, all right. Think about this. Just think about this ridiculous thing. How could Walker and Lucky be indicted for a felony over $200 and Pitts is not even investigated over possible $312,000 worth of missing asphalt? How could anybody think that? So that's what we had. 6,738 tons were actually purchased, and we know that's true. We think we're confident that they purchased that, because that's the number they used, 498,000, and they said, well, they stopped short. Well, it's 1% short. And only 2,515 tons was possible to be hauled. And it's $74. So they could have hauled $186,000 worth, but it's 4,223 tons that are missing. That's $312,000. There's 108.63 loads at 23 tons per load and 160 hours, which is what all the hours add up to be, but they're different for each road, so we wanted to get that correct. Getting rid of the engineer, that's obviously what they intended to do, and they did that. And then getting rid of the county judge was the other thing they certainly wanted to do, and they did that. But Pitts and Kennedy had to stop me from asking the relevant questions and pursuing my civil suit to remove Pitts from office. So they had to shut me up. And they did. I'm going to tell you this story. Yeah. There's a lot more got to be looked at yet, but. So here's what they did, and this is how they did it. And there wasn't any way to really anybody to understand this, even though I was trying my best to tell the story. I want to show you, this is the absolute proof of what they did and how they pulled this thing off. When I became the spokesman for all of you and everybody else, I don't know why I did that. I think about that many times now. And Jeannie, not sure why I've done this. The Commissioner's Court voted in executive session on March the 23rd, 2021. Now, I only know this because it just came out in the paper the other day when they were talking about indicting Don Limberry for not recording executive sessions. You can re-record them, or you can write notes down about them, or whatever. But anyway, they indicted him for not keeping those records. Well, when the paper printed it out, they said something about each one of those things. This was the one that they wrote. I didn't write this at all. So the paper wrote that on March the 23rd, 2021, the court went into an executive session to discuss personnel matters. After, look at this, the commissioners agreed to prevent Lufkin attorney Bob Flournoy from speaking about hiring Walker for the county road engineer. Now, I've got some First Amendment rights here, I believe. They collectively agreed, and that would have been Pitts and Kennedy and Cheshire at that time, because Steve Allen had just resigned. And so the three of them agreed they'd do whatever they had to prevent me from speaking about this engineer thing. And so they carried it out. They did a masterful job. And because on two separate occasions after that, I appeared before the Commissioner's Court to talk about hiring an engineer. And you know why? Now we're down to many months later. And I wanted to know, why aren't you hiring this engineer? It's what the law says. Why aren't you doing this? And one time I appeared, they have a public forum in the beginning of their things, and that is limited to 3 minutes. And they wouldn't even let me speak 3 minutes. I'd have been proud to speak 3 minutes, but they said, oh, well, we're not going to take that up today. You haven't signed up early enough or something. And the next time I appeared, I was actually on the agenda. I mean, my name was on an agenda item. They were going to talk about this. And I had asked to be put on the agenda, and through Don Lindbergh was still there. So I'm an agenda item. Okay, I'm going to speak. I get there, and they say, oh, well, we're just not going to take that up today. So that was twice. Okay? That's not the best one. But the third time was when the Commissioner's Court fired Walker. The state statute said that they could not fire him until they had held a public hearing about his removal. That's the only thing that the hearing was about his removal. Okay? So they knew that was the law, and so they called a public hearing. And they called it for April the 5th. And when we all got there, they said, oh, well, we're only going to give you a total of 30 minutes. And we're going to divide that by 10, so nobody can speak longer than 3 minutes. For the most significant thing that's happened in county government, probably ever. And that's all that they're going to do. And all that you're going to allow, give us 3 minutes. And this is the state law. The county road engineer holds a position for an indefinite term. County road engineer may be removed by a majority vote of the Commissioner's Court, but the court shall hold a public hearing on the removal before the removal takes effect if the county engineer requested, and he did. Okay? It doesn't give us a lot of thought about exactly what a public hearing is, but you'd think it's about public and about a hearing, right? I think so. Well, since the real question was about, why are you removing him? We didn't know. Nobody knew. Nobody knows for sure today. Why did they remove him? We think they probably said, oh, we got indicted. But they did that in executive session, so nobody knows. And so I asked them that question. I was outside my 3 minutes, probably. But I told them we can't discuss what's going on with the removal of this engineer unless you give us more time than that. How important are you that you can't give us more than 30 minutes to discuss this? And we've worked for years to get the unit road system with an engineer. And that's all you're going to do is give us, and then you're going to divide that by 10. I did get to ask them the question. I called the 3 commissioners out and I asked them, why did you fire Walker? And you know what the response was? Well, on the advice of counsel, we can't tell you. So we had a public hearing to talk about his removal, and nobody knows why they removed him, and they won't tell us. It wasn't a public hearing. It was a farce. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever been in my life. And I'm trying to just say something and say what this is. And they say, oh, you're just being disrespectful. We need to hold you in contempt. I mean, we'll just file a grievance against you with the state bar. And I'd never appeared as a lawyer. I don't have on a lawyer suit today. I'm just a citizen. But like I say, if you would think it was going to be a public hearing about the removal, that the only people who know about why he was removed need to tell you why he was removed. It was obvious he wasn't being removed because he wasn't doing a good job. Why was he being removed? And other people there said, well, I'll take 3 minutes and I'll give them to you. I'll give you my 3 minutes. I'll give you my 3. Oh, no, you can't do that. No, we're not going to let that happen. You can't do that. In fact, Commissioner Pitts made a motion. When all this stuff's going on, he made a motion, Kennedy seconded it, that the time could not be extended past 3 minutes. Even though their rules allowed them to do it in certain circumstances, they could do it longer. But they kept saying, oh, that's our rules. That's our rules. Well, they adjourned in 30 minutes. We never found out why they were removing the engineer that all of us had worked for so hard to try to get our roads done professionally. And so they had a meeting next week. The next week, it was a regular meeting, I guess. I was on their agenda. They put me on their agenda to be found in contempt of court. So when it started, they had their public forum, and they gave me 3 minutes to speak about my own contempt. And then I thought, well, I was starting to get to talk when my agenda item comes up. Everybody else does. They get to talk about what's on the agenda. No, they refused to let me speak, even on my own agenda item. And then Judge Wright called for a vote, the acting county judge, for a vote, and only three people voted. Commissioner Rod Paulette voted no. He wasn't about to do it. But Kennedy Smith voted to fine me $25, which was the maximum amount under the law that they could assess me, but statute said I could go to jail until I paid the fine. And I got up and made an announcement. I ain't paying the fine. I don't care if it's $1. I'm not paying the fine. I'm not guilty. I am not going to pay the fine. And furthermore, nobody, I had many friends in there. I said, none of you are authorized to pay my fine. Because once the fine is paid, you can't appeal. I said, I'm going to appeal. And so it's a little bit funny now, but wasn't quite that funny. I've never been held in contempt of court but one time in my life, and that was by a federal judge. But even he didn't put me in jail. But later on that day, somebody said, did you know that somebody paid your fine? And I said, no. I told everybody, including the commissioners and everybody, I said, nobody is authorized to pay my fine. Well, it's been paid. So I go to the county clerk. Well, Judge Wright came and paid your fine. The judge that was responsible for me being held in contempt. And when confronted about it, he just said, well, we've talked about this enough. This whole controversy needs to go away. In other words, he didn't want me to speak anymore either. And then on July the 15th, this from yesterday, a month ago, the Commissioners Court met and they agreed to hire a non-engineer road administrator. Maybe a good guy, I don't know anything about him. But their action was not legal because they couldn't reduce the requirement from an engineer to just somebody with construction experience unless they determined that they were absolutely unable to hire an engineer. The law is just as clear as it can be. They never even talked about that. I mean, I think they sent out some requests to hire an engineer, but they weren't serious about it. And so about 3 weeks ago, I sent out another FOIA request. These are really neat. You should try this sometime. You can find out a lot of things. But anyway, when I sent that request, I just wanted to know, what have you done to try to hire an engineer since you fired Walker? What, at least tell us. I mean, where did you advertise it? Did you hire a headhunter? What did you spend? How long have you tried this? How much money have you offered to pay an engineer? What have you done? And I get something back from their lawyer the following week. He said, we're not going to answer your questions. We're going to send it to the Attorney General and let them decide if you can properly ask these questions. So the Commissioner Court has not legally hired a road administrator, nor has Walker actually been fired because they didn't have a public hearing for him. But they're going on anyway. And everything they're doing is just a farce. And they just thumb in their nose at the law and everybody else and trying to say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. No, this is what's happened, and they won't tell these stories, and that's it. Well, one of the few things that I can still do, I filed another lawsuit. And I really don't like lawsuits. I'm a weird lawyer, but I filed a lawsuit against the county asking that a district judge declare, it's called a declaratory judgment suit, declare that the public hearing that they so-called was not what the statute anticipated. I mean, the statute obviously expected that there'd be some ability to discuss the removal of the engineer. And I've also asked that they determine that they made no determination that they couldn't hire another engineer. They have to put that publicly. They've never discussed it. You won't find it in any of the minutes or anything. But it doesn't stop there. Sorry, but I'm almost done. For fear that this misdemeanor claim against Limberry and these other guys was probably going to be thrown out because of the conduct of the Rangers. And that's all being disclosed. They thought, well, if that grand jury indictment gets thrown out or quashed, as we call it, Limberry will go back in automatically. He'll go back to being county judge just like that. Well, they couldn't have that happen. Well, that's a good idea, but they wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen. So what did they do? They went back and re-indicted him on the same thing, and so they could say, well, they didn't really use those Rangers for this. So they indicted him for the same ridiculous thing about having a meeting without notice. And just in case that one doesn't make it either, we're going to indict him on 21 counts of not recording a executive session. Now, I was city attorney for 41 years, and we've had many executive sessions, and I've had to be responsible for keeping them in line and telling them what the law is and all that kind of thing. This is totally absurd, ridiculous. But anyway, they did it because they realized that it's going to take him longer than by next January, when his term was going to be up anyway, they'll run out the clock. And he won't ever get back into office. Yeah. All right. The other thing that's so ridiculous about that is that under that statute, the statute says that anybody that participates in a meeting that's not being recorded properly is also guilty. That would mean that Pitts and Kennedy would also be guilty. But they didn't get indicted. They were in all these meetings. The county attorney was in on all those meetings. He didn't tell them that what they were doing was wrong or illegal. All right, my plea is that all you take this information and do whatever God tells you to do with it. But we got to wake up and we got to rise up. And for this occasion, we need to remember this. This is our county. This is your county. These are our roads. They are your roads. These are your tax dollars and my tax dollars. The $6 million note is your debt. I'm not claiming any part of that. The unit road system was your choice. Look at how you did that. And the unit road system has been the law since November the 3rd, 2020. And we don't have an engineer today. They let him stay. He held on for about 5 months, and they illegally fired him. Oh, we got to clean up the commissioner's court, and the first thing that's got to happen, I can't seem to remove Pitts through the attorney general. Pitts and Kennedy have done enormous damage to our county. Sad to say. We have two fine men. They're coming on to the council, the commissioner's court in January. That's Kenneth Jeffrey and Kent Walker. I think they'll do a great job. And they, and hopefully with Keith Wright, can bring some righteous leadership and integrity to our county government. And we need to pray for them. And we need to do our job in providing oversight to all of our government entities, schools, whatever it is. We need to be providing oversight. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine. How did I ever let this happen? I'm dealing with stuff all the time. And you can see it is just absolutely corrupt. And they don't care about you. They don't care about the law. But they know that we're not going to do anything, apparently, but we're going to do something. That's Plato, if you didn't recognize him. The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. We're all guilty. All of us are guilty. And we have to pledge that we're not going to be guilty anymore. We're not going to be silent. We're going to stand and speak the truth. And the truth is going to be able to be the only thing that can set us free. I look at most of y'all are pretty old. Most of you remember Apollo 13. Remember Apollo 13? And the famous saying when they were in trouble was, Houston, we got a problem. That's why I've titled this Angelina County, we got a problem. And they called for help. They called home. And this is home. And I'm calling for help. We all got to be calling for help. And each other is going to be the help that we need. That scripture that I talked about earlier about Amos, that how can two walk together unless they agree? We got to be in agreement of what the truth is, and then let it motivate us to do the things that we ought to do. And we then have to muster up the courage and the energy to fight for what's right. And someone suggested that we ought to form a countywide organization, and they called it Act Angelina County Together, in order to ride herd on our elected officials for the future. And I think that's a good idea. If you're willing to join together with us, please, there's people in the back that will let you, they've got a bunch of pads that let you write your name and phone number and email down. And we're not going to sit silently by. And if we can do this thing together, we're going to make a difference. And it's obviously not just that. It's my lot, at least right now, by the county government. But I've been embarrassed. I've been humiliated to see people that we know that act like this and that do this to us and don't care about the people. And but I realize that a lot of it is my fault. And I think you'll find you are too. But we've got to provide some leadership to oversee some things. So anyway, when you go out, if you're interested at all, we're going to be doing something in the future. Don't know exactly what it's going to be. Don't know what the courts are going to do. Don't know what the commissioner's court's going to do. We've already figured it out. I'm going to take some questions here in just a second. But anyway, please sign up. I'm not looking for any speeches, but I will take a few minutes. And I've already gone over time that I figured. But I will take a few questions if you want to ask some. Is there a question in that? Here's somebody with a microphone. If you got a question, all right, this gentleman right here. Here, take the microphone, please.
Okay. How do they set the commissioner's salaries? If we want to get them out, let's hit them in a pocketbook.
They
Because
set it,
Pitts
they set
told
it
me-
themselves.
Pitts told
They
me
set their own salary.
he told me on the telephone when I called him about Chuck, when they were having problems, why he didn't confirm me. He told me that he could not go anywhere else and make the kind of money he's making.
Of course not.
There's got to be a way for us to stop that.
Well, if we can, together, we can begin to insist on it. Was there somebody else had a question? Is that Mike? Wait just a second. Let me get this one right here. Mike.
I had two if I could.
Oh.
When you were back on the numbers on the dump trucks, I was a little confused. Is that calculation with one dump truck running those loads?
Well, it doesn't matter. It's that many hours of dump trucks. That's the hours, whether it was 2, 3, 10, 1.
But you could run more loads in the hour if you use more than one dump truck, right? So maybe that's where the missing
but
step is.
each dump truck has an hour. It's each one of them has
Has
an
its
amount.
own sheet?
So no, it's 16 hours of dump truck time.
Okay. And did you say that the engineer came from the city of Lufkin before he went to the county?
Yes,
Was he fired from the city?
he was.
What for?
It's a long story, but it's not anything significant. I can tell you that, and the city manager told me the same thing. It was a technical thing, but he was let go on a situation that he had actually done a job in Jones Park that the engineers for the city of Lufkin said was going to cost $80,000 more than what it cost for him to do it. He did it and saved the city about $80,000 on that one job. That's another story. I can just tell you, it wasn't anything they could fire him over here, but that's what they said. I understand that. No, I know your question very well. Yes, some lady, I can't say who you are. Hi, Rachel. Well, we're demanding it every way we can, and I've got lawsuit filed, and my hope is still that the Attorney General will see he's been duped as well, and that he might understand that. I'm sure this is going to be recorded, and it's going to be provided to him so he can see what the real truth is, and hopefully go ahead and get rid of Pitts. But Pitts is in there. Kennedy's got an election coming up in November. Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, stand up. Let me.
You might have to walk further back so you can see you.
Well, I appreciate that. I did it personally because I don't. Some of them want to say, "Well, what are you getting out of it? What is it to you? Why are you? You must be getting a kickback or something like that." That's what I've heard. I want to pay for it now. If somebody wants to come up later and help me with that, it was $800 to rent this thing, but I've spent. $2,300 plus $800 to buy full-page ads in both the Lufkin paper and the Diboll paper last week to notify people they need to come and hear the truth. That's all this is about, is for the public to know what is true. And believe me, it's worth every penny of that to me.
We got a question.
And I appreciate it.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Sir?
Yes.
Over here.
Right.
Over here.
Okay.
Hey,
All right.
Way over here.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Tell us your name.
Daniel Saunier, Precinct 4.
Okay.
Just had a real quick question because I know you've proven evidently that our officials can't keep records. But every load that comes out of the yard, every dump truck that was released, everything, So every load, I can promise you, the asphalt company has because they get paid by invoice.
Sure.
So they have a record of every load that's ever left their facility. Why can't we use those to prove exactly how much asphalt left their facility? And then they have to prove where that asphalt.
No, we do know that. We're confident about that.
So we know exactly how much excess
We've got all of their loading tickets, so we know how much they spent. We just don't know where it went. I mean, they could take a load and put it on their own driveway, whatever. We don't know what happened to it, but there's $312,000 that needs to be determined, and so we know what they spent. Thank you. Good question, though. Yes, ma'am.
Austin auditors
The auditors in Austin.
in Austin, Texas, control the business here. So I think if we all got together and, because I've already looked it up, and find their names and start pushing some letters to them, they may just come right on down here and do a little chit-chatting.
That's a real possibility. And obviously, you expect that these things wouldn't get past our own county auditor. I don't understand that. I mean, that the only thing that shows until these false work orders showed up, only thing we had before was somebody, and we don't know who nor when they wrote the name of those roads on there. That's all. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I've gotten the story tonight, so I've heard a whole lot more, but my concerns mostly, because I'm not into your business, but I am upset that my vote was so easily thrown out when they took care of getting rid of the judge. We all know, and now they're smearing his character.
There you are.
And
That's
what
correct.
a shame and disgrace, and I am very angry about that.
And you should be,
And
and we
I
all
hope
should
everybody
be.
else is, because Mr. Limberry's a
We
great
all
guy.
should be.
My question is, when does the county commissioners, when do they meet? And is it an open meeting? Can we
Well,
be there?
Yeah, oh, yes, you can be there, and they meet every second, the 2 times a month, I believe is right, on a Tuesday. Second and fourth, okay, so second and fourth Tuesdays, I think it's generally at 9 or 10 in the morning?
Where?
10, okay, and no, we should be there. I mean, they may not let you speak.
Thank you.
Due to time constraints, this is the last 2 we can take tonight.
Okay, tell me your name and,
Bob, hi, it's Kim Ogden. It's nice to
hi,
see you.
Kim, good to
Hi.
see you.
All right, so I have a question.
Yes.
I ran for city council, which is a volunteer position, correct?
Yes.
So I want to know, why can the county commissioner position not be a volunteer position? And how do we affect that change as the community to make it a volunteer position so that those who run do so because they love the county rather than the paycheck they receive? I need you to tell this crowd,
Great.
how do we affect the change to make it a volunteer position?
Great question and point. Thank you, Kim. First of all, the commissioners are the ones, and I think we'll have some they're coming on the commissioners' court that are going to be willing to cut their salaries down. But I think it would take an act of the legislature, Kim. I'm not positive about that yet, to get that change. But that's absolutely what ought to happen. This is big business. You know, we got a $35 million budget that these men are overseeing. And right now, we got a $16 million grant that the county has just received, and maybe part of why they wanted to get rid of Don Limberry, so they could control that grant. I don't know that that's true, but there's something to be concerned about. They're dealing with a lot of money, and it's your money, and we need to see everything that they're doing with it. Thank you.
Last question here.
I thought he said this was the last person that was going to speak.
Well, I got one more, Bob.
That's my wife back over there, Mama. But
I'm just wondering, and this may be out of line, but would a class action carry any more weight?
it's not really a proper thing for a class action suit. But I know what you're saying. Your presence your voice is going to be what's going to make the difference here. It's not going to be through a court. We just got to stand up and we got to demand it. And it's a shame it takes that long. Well, I don't have a choice. I have to go home with this lady tonight. Hold on, Mama. What? Now, now I've told everybody that they're not supposed to make a
There's only one
speech.
thing, honey, you've had your say. Now it's my turn. No, I mean, if anything happens to Bob, I tell him, be sure and tell y'all, we will carry on. I know everything that's going on. I mean, I hear it all the time, and I've lived it for, you started on this 20 years ago? But
First
anyway,
time was we tried to get the
But I
low
wanted the
system.
commissioners to know too, that somebody will pick up this. I know because they're saying, oh, he's old and he's got a pacemaker now. But I mean, this will not be dropped. I guarantee you, this will go on until justice is done. And one thing else I want to tell you. Okay. No, I want to tell you.
I don't know if they're clapping for you or for me.
Shh, honey, these 2 Texas Rangers in our counties are under investigation right now. I want you to know that.
I have
under
filed under
investigation.
internal affairs on them. Is that all the time that we have? Hey, we got all this on YouTube. Is going to have this whole thing. Share it with everybody that you can find. I don't know how you get to it exactly, but anyway, thank you all for coming. I hope I didn't confuse you more than you already were.
See, you remember my deal with